Okay, welcome back. I'm going to have to try to make this video as quick as possible because I'm very much aware, as I'm currently recording this, it is Thursday morning. For those that don't know, I do work overnight, so unfortunately I will have to sleep during the daytime, so I'll have to make a quick review and I'll do a quick preview because I don't want to be waking up at 6, 7 o'clock and then the game already started and then I make a prediction then. It may not look very fair, so I want to try to get this done ASAP. So week 4, we had all 32 teams in action, so therefore we had no bye weeks thus far. The Thursday night matchup took place in Arizona. We had the Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks. As you can see on the screen, the Seahawks would win this game by a final score of 23-20. And I did pick Seattle in this one. I got off to a good start, but unfortunately I had my worst week when it came to predictions. And I'll kind of dive into my overall record. It wasn't pretty, to say the least. So the second game took place actually in Dublin, Ireland, between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. 24-21 would be the final score in favor of the Steel City. They seem to always amaze me, and they always seem to overcome any sort of obstacle that you name it. If you had asked me at the start of the season that Aaron Rodgers would lead the Pittsburgh Steelers to be in first place of the AFC North, I would have said you're crazy. But that division, it's open for pretty much anybody at this point. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're the only team that is above 500. I'm pretty sure the Bengals, Ravens, and the Browns are all either 500 or below. So the Steelers possibly could get this division. There's still 13 more games to be played, obviously, but if they keep this pace up, I would not be surprised if they made the postseason. So I started off 2-0, not too bad. The Atlanta Falcons took on the Washington Commanders. Now, I've been ranting about the Falcons for what feels like years, and I never could quite understand them. They got blown out the week before, so I thought maybe the Commanders would have the edge coming into this contest. It was a close game. I'm not going to deny that, but the Falcons would prevail 34-27. So that was my first loss. So far I was 2-1. The Buffalo Bills took on the New Orleans Saints. I did predict that Buffalo would win, and they sure did, 31-19. I do believe they are still undefeated on the season, while the Saints, unfortunately, are still winless so far in 2025. The Detroit Lions played host to the Cleveland Browns. I did predict that Detroit would win this game. 34-10 would be the final score. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe they are currently atop of the NFC North. Now, this is a game I should have predicted that Houston would win. They did, ultimately, 26-0. They shut out the Titans. But because I got burned on the first 3 weeks of the season, I had and still kind of do have high hopes for the Houston Texans, but they're currently 2 games behind first place in that division. Now, granted, there's still 14 games to be played for a lot of teams, so there's still plenty of football left. They could possibly push themselves back to 500 by week number 6 or whatever it is. So there is hope now, but can they stay consistent? If you're a Texans fan, you got to hope that the first 3 weeks were just learning curves, and that's the worst football you're going to see out of them this season. You can only hope that their expectations and what they should do are going to be better, and they should have more wins. So now that they've gotten their first win of the season, when I make my prediction for week 5, I might take the Texans. It just depends on who they play. Just because they got off to such a poor start and there were such high expectations for this team, the fact that they only got 1 win in September, it doesn't look that good. They definitely need more wins in October, November, January, respectively, if they want to make any noise and get back into the postseason. The New England Patriots played host to the Carolina Panthers. 42-13 would be the final score. It was a bit of a blowout, to say the least. I did predict that the Patriots would win, so at least I got back into the win column. The Giants stunned the Chargers. I could not believe this. I was absolutely beside myself. Now, I did predict that LA would win, like a lot of people did. They were guaranteed the favorite heading into this matchup. But the fact that the Giants got their first win of the season against a very good Chargers team just goes to show that you could it could be like a trap. Like, this could have been a trap game for the Chargers. I mean, it's not like the Giants played piss poor all season. After all, they did go to overtime against the Cowboys. Unfortunately, they did lose that one 37-34, but it just proves that they can put up points. And if I'm not mistaken, Dart got his first career start. Jackson Dart, if I'm not mistaken, got his first career start and got his first career win. So there is hope for the Giants and this quarterback moving forward. The Philadelphia Eagles went into Tampa Bay. Now, because of the recent success that the Buccaneers have had over the Eagles, I did pick Tampa. It was a close game, but unfortunately, Baker Mayfield was not able to make a fourth consecutive comeback win. There's no panic, though. They still are 3-1 on the season. The Eagles are still perfect. I believe these two are going to be competitive teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if they both made the postseason. The Los Angeles Rams finally ended Daniel Jones's reign of being perfect on the season. The Rams are looking like a very good team. Matt Stafford, even though he's playing in what feels like year 20, I wouldn't be surprised. He's playing at a very good level. I'm not going to say elite, but I mean, the Rams are a very good team. As for the Colts, despite the loss, they are still sitting 3-1 on the season, so there's really no need to panic. It's just one loss. They will more than likely bounce back. I don't see them having a hot start and going cold. They are currently the team to beat in the AFC South. Sorry, I say that, but I think they're tied with the Jags, and I'll get to them in just a second. But still, 3-1 on the season, that's not too shabby. Speaking of those Jaguars, they did win in San Fran, and that's a game I did predict that they would. I'm like, just because of the 49ers and how injury-plagued they are, I didn't feel that confident going into this game against the Jaguars. And let's be honest, the Jacksonville is looking a lot better this season than they were the last two seasons. So you could give credit to the coaching change. You could give credit to draft picks, player signings, trades, whatever it is. But Trevor Lawrence seems like he's more comfortable in the pocket. And now that they are tied with the Colts, maybe the Jaguars could possibly compete with them for that AFC South crown. Again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Texans, but they're just currently both 2 games behind both of those teams for first place in that division. So the Texans, unfortunately, do have to play catch-up if they want to try and get back in the hunt. As for the Jaguars and the Colts, they have the exact similar record, so they're essentially tied for first in that division. And as long as these two teams can stay that way, this should be a very fun race to see who gets that AFC South crown. As for the 49ers, unfortunately, they're kind of in the same situation as like the Bengals. Now, I'm not comparing Joe Burrow to Brock Purdy. I mean, they're both good quarterbacks. Obviously, Joe Burrow is probably a top 3, top 4 quarterback in the entire National Football League. But due to him being injured, unfortunately, it's looking very negatively for the Bengals. And as for the 49ers, just because they're so banged up, and now Purdy's going to be missing week 5 against the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, which is a critical divisional matchup. I think the 49ers might slip down to second, maybe third place in the NFC West. Again, it's not that they don't have the talent. They do, but there are certain players that it's hard to replace. So, yes, I'm sure every team's mindset is next man up, but when you're relying on that man, whether it's a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, basically any position on the field, if they're very good at that and unfortunately they go down, you're not always guaranteed to have the same success with the person that's basically covering you until you come back from your injury. So for the 49ers, there's still lots of season left, but if the injuries keep piling up and if Brock Purdy is out for X amount of time, then obviously they got to go to Mac Jones. Can he really carry this team to stay competitive in the NFC West? I don't want to say no. I don't want to say yes. It's tricky because he's just been so inconsistent and he hasn't had a lot on his resume, to put it bluntly, to really prove to me that he can be the guy to step up and carry this team to victory week in and week out. All right, we had a bit of a snooze fest between the Chiefs and the Ravens. I predicted that Baltimore would win because I thought that after they lost in week 3, they'd have some motivation to get win. And obviously, one of their foes is the Chiefs. So going into Arrowhead would have been nice for them to get back in the win column. to get back to 500. Unfortunately, they dropped a bit of a deuce, and now it's looking like Lamar Jackson's hamstring is what kept him out at the end of that game. So is he going to be questionable for this upcoming week? Unless they have a bye, I'm not too sure. But it's not looking too good for the Ravens. But I will give them credit when credit is due. If there's one team that can, dig deep and really try to get their ish together, it's the Ravens. I just don't see a scenario where you have a two-time NFL MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson and the talent that he has around him, and you have Derrick Henry in your backfield. There's not a scenario where I think they're going to finish 7-10. I would be very surprised if that was the case, because of the talent that they have on that team. Now, obviously, injuries can play a factor, and if Lamar isn't able to go for week 5, and if he misses multiple weeks, then he could be the Ravens could find themselves in the same situation as the Bengals. They could be third, which they currently are right now in the AFC South. They could stay in third place, or if they could get some wins and get some healthy bodies, then they can obviously get back to their winning ways. They, in my opinion, at the start of the season, were one of the few teams in the AFC where you say they are definitely a Super Bowl contender. Right now, it's just not looking like that. As for the Chiefs, I have no choice but to swallow my pride. I was ecstatic when they lost their first 2 weeks of the season because they're in the same division as my team, but now they're looking like they finally got their legs underneath of them. They're looking like the Chiefs of old, and it doesn't matter who they have on the receiving core. They just seem to click with Patrick Mahomes, and that guy could throw the ball backwards for 50 yards, I'm sure, if he really tried. So it's just outstanding how much talent they have on that team, even though they don't have big names. So, again, I'll give credit where the Chiefs are due. I think they're second in the AFC West right now. They're just a game behind the Chargers. So even though they technically did lose to the Chargers in week 1, if they happen to win week 5, and the Chargers happen to win or lose, they could find themselves back on top of the AFC West. So it's crazy how time goes by so fast and how just 2 or 3 weeks you can change in the standings. It's unbelievable. So I never once doubted that they wouldn't be contending for a playoff spot. I was just hoping that they wouldn't be. The Raiders and the Bears. This came down to it wasn't really a last-second field goal. I think there was still 30 seconds to go on the clock. The Raiders were driving. They went to try to go for the late go-ahead field goal. Unfortunately, it was blocked. The Bears came away with a victory. They are currently 2-2, if I'm not mistaken, on the season. And as for the Raiders, I think they have now dropped to 1-3. Which is kind of where I expected them to be. Not disrespecting the Raiders, but just because of the division that they're in with the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Chiefs, I just don't think they're going to leapfrog 1, 2, or 3 of those teams. I just think that division is just so stacked. Now, if the Raiders were in the AFC South, I'd say they got a chance. Maybe if they were in any other division of the football league, you could say they could be a playoff team. But because they have 3 really good teams in that division, I think, unfortunately, they will be basement dwellers in the AFC West. The Sunday Night Football took place in Dallas. I predicted that the Packers would win, and they almost blew it. I'm pretty sure it was late in the overtime frame where they had no timeouts. There was about 20 seconds left. They let a good chunk of that clock run down. Now, if looking back, watching it, if they spiked it, it would have been 4th down, and then maybe you could say that the Cowboys could have had a little bit of time left on the clock to maybe try for a last-second field goal attempt. But for me, a tie means absolutely nothing because you're not getting any further ahead in the standings, and you're not getting any lower in the standings. You're basically staying idle. You're not doing anything. So it's crazy to me. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a few years ago. Now, there have been a number of rule changes over the years, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure, and I can't remember the exact year it changed, but overtime used to be a 15-minute quarter. And then for some reason, they cut it down to 10 minutes because they were afraid that the 15 minutes that there could be potential a tie. Well, guess what? You just cut 5 minutes off the clock and you still ended up with a tie. So if that is one of the excuses or reasons why they went from 15 minutes to 10 minutes was because they thought that teams would be tying too much. Well, now they're going to be tying even more because they have less time on the clock. These two teams had one possession respectively in overtime, and they each kicked a field goal. That was it. So, I mean, you got to think in the playoffs, they have 15-minute quarters. In any other sport, you have to have a winner. Even if it's baseball, you go to extra innings. If you have hockey, you go to overtime and a shootout. So it just blows my mind that this is the one out of the four big national North American sports that it's okay to end in a tie. And nobody wants a tie because whether you're a Packers fan or a Cowboys fan, you're not walking away from this happy. You're just walking away. You're just numb. You're like, it's good we didn't lose, but it sucks we didn't win. So I'm not a fan of ties. And if anybody did pick a tie, congratulations. You got the first tie of the 2025 season. But I am not a fan of ties. I believe the game should resolve themselves. Do a second quarter. Like if you want to do 10-minute quarters, that's fine. Do a second overtime quarter. One team will prevail. One team will lose. You know what I mean? Like it just makes sense because when it's all said and done, if you're still fighting for a playoff spot, but that tie ends up screwing you out of a playoff spot, what good does that do? Like it makes no sense why they cut the time down and how they thought that teams would be more urgent to try to score points. Well, no, they're going to take their time because if they can kill the clock, they're going to do that instead. So that's just one rule change I wasn't too crazy about, and I'm clearly still not crazy about it right now. So anyway, I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick. I don't want to spend too much time. So the Dolphins and Jets, they did play. These were two winless teams, and I'm so happy this didn't end in a tie either. But the Dolphins would prevail 27-21. The big news coming out of this is obviously Tyreek Hill is out for the season. What's his future going to hold? Is he going to want to stay in Miami in the offseason? He did kind of hint that he would be interested in exploring a possible trade. So we'll see where Tyreek Hill ends up in 2026 once he's good and healthy. Yes, you could make an argument that he's maybe getting up there in age, but he's still fast. He can still run. Feels like he can still run a mile. So if I'm any other team in the league, if the Dolphins decide they want to cut ties or they want to try to trade him away, then I got a funny feeling there's going to be a few teams that'll be answering the phone calls if they can have the cheetah on their team. The Broncos and the Bengals, I did predict Denver would win only because I'm a Broncos fan, so I'm a bit biased in this one. I'm not really going to say I'm happy about the win, like ecstatic, and I'm glad they got back in the win column. I'm glad they got back to 2-2, but the fact that we beat up an already defeated team, they don't have a good defense, the Bengals, I should say. They don't have a good defense. They have no offense now that Joe Burrow's gone. For the Bengals, I feel really bad for you, and I'm not hating on the Bengals. I'm not a Bengal lover, but when you lose a franchise quarterback and the fact that he's going to be gone for at least 2, possibly 3 months, so you're looking that if he comes back, it might be mid to late December. At that point, your season's pretty much done. If you're not in the playoff hunt, take my advice, please, Bengals. Don't bring Burrow back. Now, if you guys are in the hunt, say you come back, you got 2 weeks left, and let's just say hypothetically you're 8-6 or 8-7, and you still have a potential shot of making the playoffs, then of course, yes, you want to bring him back so you have a chance to win those couple of games and compete and get into the playoffs. I mean, it's hard to think that if he doesn't come back, this would be 2 straight years of no Bengals in the postseason. And it's rare because he led them to, I'm pretty sure, 3 straight playoff appearances, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously last year they missed it. This year he's out. So I'm not going to be gloating and say, yeah, we just crushed the Bengals. Well, we just beat a team that isn't really a team. Like, they had less than 200 total yards for passing and rushing. You could give credit to the defense, but when their offense isn't that good and their defense isn't that good, it's not really anything to brag about. Now, if the final score was 28-3 and we beat the Chiefs or we beat the Ravens or we beat the Bills, then I'd probably be gloating a little bit because those are 3 really solid teams. But the fact that we beat a team that everybody knows, and if you don't know, you're in denial. Everybody knows that this team is likely, unless they can turn things around with Browning, or they bring in or they make a trade for another quarterback, this team is likely going to finish possibly third or fourth in this division. Because I got a funny feeling the Ravens are going to get their ish together, and the Steelers seem to have, their foot on the gas pedal, and they're not letting up. So the Ravens, I think, will possibly leapfrog the Bengals unless they get injury plagued, or Lamar plays like crap, or Henry keeps fumbling the ball. But for the Bengals, it just sucks because you get off to a 2-0 start. You were leading that division, but because you lost Burrow, and it just seems like the team's just lost confidence, and that really sucks. If that was my team, I'd probably be extremely upset, really depressed, knowing that this is going to be a very long season. And if we play like that against Denver, which is a very good defense, if you go up against other teams that the defense is just okay or subpar and you still lose like that, you're not having a winning year. Like, I'm sorry, you're just not. Anyway, that's enough ranting about the teams for now. So overall, I had 9 wins and 7 losses with my prediction. Sorry, 9, 6, and 1, because 1 was a tie. Yeah. So I'll still take the loss because it wasn't a win for either team. So I'm pretty sure my record overall after week 4 is now 43-21, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm still 20 games above 500, but this was a lot closer of a win-loss column for week number 4 than my previous 3 weeks. So here's hoping that week number 5 I can actually do better, and here's hoping there's no more ties the rest of the season because I can't stand them. Anyways, that's enough for this video. I will do a video to upload my preview for this week 5. Thank you all for tuning in as usual. If you're new to this channel, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative as well. Until next time, and as always, take care.